President, please be seated. The court is back in session. I hand over to the prosecutor to continue his line of questioning. You may proceed. Good afternoon. Again, Mr. Nguyen would like to follow up with the question before we broke. In the agenda of the meetings, there was one item concerning the attack on Phnom Penh. Did they discuss the evacuation of people out of Phnom Penh in that meeting? Response. In this meeting, there was no indication in relation to the evacuation of people out of Phnom Penh, but we discussed mainly on the attack on Phnom Penh, and it was our expectation that we would be able to capture Phnom Penh on the 18th of April 1975, but we actually could capture Phnom Penh on the 17th of April. Question. On the same document, you said that there was a meeting to plan the attack on Phnom Penh, and you also mentioned the evacuation of people. When you were fighting your way to Phnom Penh, did you lead an army of 6,000 to 7,000 soldiers, or the composition of the army was changed? Response. At that time, they designated one regiment to attack from one direction, and it was under the supervision of the division commander. Question. I would like to know how many soldiers were under your direct command at that time. You told the investigator that there were 3 targets you fought your way into Phnom Penh, one from Pojantong, the other 2 from Stung Min Chai and Obaik Om. So how many soldiers were under your direct commands when you were fighting your way into Phnom Penh? Response. At that time, I commanded 1 regiment, and the other 2 regiments from Stung Min Chai and others were under other people's commands. I was leading the regiment from Pojantong. There was another regiment fighting their way from Bang Prajap. In your document, in document E3, you mentioned in question 3 that your superior told you that you must not attack the enemy if they surrender or retreated. In the actual situation, did you ever hear any broadcast on the radio or by any other means that Lon Nol soldier surrendered or retreated?
បាទនៅពេលនោះខ្ញុំអត់បានស្ដាប់
Response: At that time, I did not listen to the radio broadcast. We were engaged in fierce fighting. We only received instruction from the division commander, and then we executed the order. Questions. So, in reality, did you ever see any soldiers, your opponent, raise the white flag, surrendering? Response: When we got into Phnom Penh, at that time we saw white flag raising in many houses, and the city was at that time empty and quiet. Question: When the red flag was hoisted, did your soldiers capture any Lon Nol soldiers?
បាទនៅពេល
Response: When we conquered Phnom Penh, we did not arrest any soldiers. At least I could say for my own regiment, we did not arrest any soldiers. Question: I would like you to enlighten the court on one term. You say that the instruction from your superior that we must not harm the surrendered opponents. Was that correct?
បាទចឹងមែន
Yes, that is correct. Question: Was there any instruction from the superior at the upper level if any soldiers from Lon Nol administration were captured, where would they send those soldiers to?
បាទពេលដែល
Response: Upon capture of soldiers, they would refer those soldiers to the decision into the hand of the commander of the division, and I did not know how he would deal with those captured soldiers. In document E3/424, in question 3, you told the investigator that 3 days after the liberation of Phnom Penh, you saw people were being evacuated out of Phnom Penh city. So when you first got to Phnom Penh, what was your impression of the city overall?
ក្នុងពេលដែល
Response: When I first got to the city, I found that the city was quiet. There were no people walking or loitering in the streets. The situation was quiet.
ចុះតែហ៊ានលោកធ្វើ
Question: How about your soldiers? What did they do?
បាទខាង
Response: The soldiers under my command withdrew backward a little bit, and we stationed somewhere west of Stung Mien Chai.
សំណួរខាងលើដដែល
In the same document, particularly in the same question I just mentioned to you, you said that you saw people being evacuated out of Phnom Penh city. Do you know whether or not this was the assignment given to soldiers or civilian organization?
បាទ
Response. In evacuating civilians out of Phnom Penh, I never received any order from anyone, and I did not know how this was executed. I only heard that people were required to leave the city, and those who left through my areas, we simply let them leave the city.
នៅក្នុងឯកសារលេខ
In the same document E3/424, question 3, you told the investigators that the soldiers under your command withdrew entirely. Did you do this at your own will, or it was the instruction from your superior?
បាទ
Response. In withdrawing my forces out of Phnom Penh, there was a direct instruction from Tamok that we had to withdraw our troops out of Phnom Penh within a week.
ការបញ្ជានេះមាន
Question. Was this a decision handed down directly from Tamok, or was it the decision of a meeting?
បាទ
Response. There was no meeting at that time, but it was the direction of the division commander.
ពេលដែលលោកបញ្ជា
Question. When you received the order to withdraw your troops out of Phnom Penh, do you still recall whether or not people had already been evacuated out of the city?
បាទពេល
Response. No, at that time, people were being evacuated. Some had already left and others were still in the cities.
ទៅទៀត
In the same document E3/424, question answer 2, and that should be read in conjunction with question and answer 6. You say that you were the commander of Battalion 136 in Regiment 16 of Division 1, and you provided security protection to Ta Seung. And in your answer to question number 6, you say that the upper authority transferred your regiment to be stationed in Koh Kong province. You mentioned the upper echelon. Did you refer to the zone secretary or the division secretary? President. Witness, please hold on. The National Defense Counsel for Mr. Kirsumpon, you may proceed. Counsel. Thank you, Mr. President. I will be very brief. I note that the prosecutor might have confused. Actually, he assisted Ta Seung. He did not provide security protection for Ta Seung. Mr. Wainwood, that is correct, Mr. President. I might have misstated that. So I would like to repeat my question again. You refer to the upper echelon. Who specifically you were referring to? Did you refer to the zone secretary or division secretary?
បាទ
Response. Upper echelon in this context was referred to both the commander of the division as well as the zone secretary. Question. In this structure, there were two zones, the southwest zone and the west zone for Koh Kong province. Why could you lead one regiment to the West Zone safely and easily?
បាទ
Response. That was the arrangement of the division and zone.
តើលោកអាច
Question. Can you explain a little bit further whether or not that was approved by the General Staff? Because you said that there were 6,000 soldiers under your command. To your knowledge, do you think that the General Staff was informed of this transfer of regiment?
បាទ ខ្ញុំ
Response. I do not really understand this question.
នេះចម្លើយ
Mr. Wainhood, this is based on your statement in the record of interview. You said that you were attached to the Southwest Zone and you were in charge of one regiment, and then later on you were transferred to the West Zone in Kakong Province. And according to your testimony earlier, you said that there were some 6,000 soldiers under your command. So if you had to bring those many soldiers from the Southwest Zone to the West Zone, did it have to be approved by the center or by the General Staff?
បាទ
Response. Following the liberation, the Southwest zones and the West Zone were not yet separated. It was after the liberation, particularly some 5 or 6 months after the liberation, the zones were divided into two, Southwest Zone and West Zone. And once the two zones were separated, there were soldiers attached to, or armies attached to the two zones as well. And they transferred me and my entire regiment to the West Zone. And I did not know whether or not there was consultation at the upper level between zone secretary or the center, because I did not know the decision at the center level. I only knew up to the zone level. So once I learned that there were two armies attached to different zones, and I was then transferred to the West Zone. At the time, they actually transferred 1.5 regiments to the West Zone, and we joined the zone military structure in the West Zone. The President, please make sure that your mic is activated before you speak. Mr. Wainhood, thank you very much for your clarification, and you made it clear that you did not know the decision at the center level. I would like to follow up on this issue. When you were transferred to the West Zone, then you were promoted to be the deputy chief or deputy chairman of division, and you were also tasked to safeguard the coastline of Cambodia, and you were also trained with the Thai troops for a week. That was in your answer to question 7. Not training, rather correct interpreters, the fighting with the Thai soldiers. So my question is, who commanded that you fight with the Thai soldiers?
បាទក្នុងការដែលខ្ញុំទទួលបញ្ជាទៅកាន់
I was designated to safeguard the coastline, and there was a conflict with Thailand, and I received an order from the division commander, and I know for sure that the commander of the division also received order from the general staff, and the reason why he ordered that attack was because Thailand encroached on the Cambodian territorial water. Particularly, they fished in the Cambodian water using illegal equipment. Question. During the fighting with Thai soldiers, did you capture any foreign soldiers?
បាទក្នុងពេលប្រយុទ្ធគ្នានោះ
In the course of the fighting, no side captured any soldiers, and the Thai soldiers used their air force to bombard on some of the islands in Cambodian territorial water, and then we used artillery to attack their airplanes, so we eventually withdrew a week after that. And question, did you arrest any or capture any soldiers?
បាទអត់មាន
Response, no, we did not capture any.
ខ្ញុំសូមអរគុណលោកសឿនដែល
Mr. Wayhood, thank you very much, Ms. Woon, for endeavoring to answer to all my questions. That is all for me, and I would like to hand over to my esteemed colleague to continue putting questions to the witness. The President. Thank you. You may proceed, International Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honours, and good afternoon, Council. And a very good afternoon to you, Ms. Vaughan. My name is Tariq Abdulhaq, and I will ask you more questions about your experiences before and during the democratic Kampuchea period. And I want to thank you for coming here to help the trial chamber find the truth about the events which you witnessed. We're very grateful to you for your time and efforts. I'll start by just asking a few follow-up questions about the period that you discussed with my colleague the early period of your activities as part of the revolution. You told my colleague that you joined the revolution in 1968 and that you were a representative of the youth in your village. Could you tell us a little bit more about what work that involved? What did you do as a representative of youth in your village?
Response. I represented the youth in the village. I provided them education about the situation in the country, about the lack of independence, and about the colonization economically by France. And that way the Cambodians did not enjoy independence. And I disseminated such information so that the youth could understand about the current situation in the country back then.
Thank you. And now, staying with that period before the coup, you told my colleague that you became a bodyguard for cadre who fled Phnom Penh to resist in the countryside. Do you recall approximately when that was? I think you said it was before the coup. Do you recall whether that was 1968 or 1969 or some other year?
Response. Those cadres who left Phnom Penh, it was in 1968. I believe it was either in mid or late 1968, and they went to the forest. And I provided them with protection.
Thank you. Now, your birth village is in Kampong Speu province and in Phnom Srok district. Did you work as a bodyguard for the cadre in that village, or was it somewhere else?
Response. At that time, I was a youth, not a cadre.
I'm sorry, there's probably a translation error. I was referring to cadre that you were protecting as a bodyguard. So my question is simply, when you did that work as a bodyguard, was that in your commune, in your village of birth, or was it in a different location?
Response. I provided the protection to the cadre partly in my village and partly in other villages or provinces, namely Kampong Speu and Kampong Chnang, which are the two adjacent provinces.
Now, you mentioned Vaughan Vet and Kyu Sampam. During this period, Were you staying with them while you were providing them protection?
Response. During the time that I provided them protection, I occasionally saw them. I did not stay with them every day. Sometimes I actually guarded the road as well for their journeys. I did not stay with them every day.
Thank you. And just to clarify that one minor point, were they staying in Kampong Speu and Kampong Chnan? Is that where Vaughan Vet and Khieu Samphan were when you were providing them protection?
Response. Sometimes they stayed in Kampong Speu, but they did not stay in the village. They stayed in the forest. It was known as the big forest of Prey Thom in Khmer in Kampong Speu. Also in Kampong Chnan, sometimes they stayed at the Oral Mountain.
And were you responsible for protecting anyone else apart from Vaughan Vet and Khieu Samphan? Were there other people that you were protecting in that period?
Bad.
Response. Yes. I provided protection to those who left Phnom Penh or those who could no longer stay in their villages. There were about 30 to 40 of them. So sometimes I also escort them on the road.
Did those people include Hu Nim or Hu Yun?
Response. Yes. They included Hu Nim, Hu Yun, Khieu Samphan, Phu Dakok Ma, and various other people whose names I cannot recall.
Thank you. If we just look at the group that you were a member of, how many people were involved? How many bodyguards were there apart from yourself?
Response. In 1968, there was just one group of us, about 20. But by 1970, there were about 150 of us.
And could you tell the court who was the head of that unit of 20 people? Who was in charge of that unit?
Response. The person in charge was Moon. He was a cadre, but he passed away. And there was another person by the name of Bun, and I cannot recall another name, but that person already died.
Thank you. Could you also tell the court who assigned you to this particular unit of 20 people?
Response. At that time, it was Tamok.
In that period, what did you understand to be the position of Mr. Khieu Samphan?
Response. I did not know his real position while we were in the forest. I only knew that he was patriotic, but I did not know his real position or function.
Apart from that, can you tell us what Mr. Khieu Samphan was doing in that period, 1968, 1969, before the coup?
Response. I knew that at that time I did not know him well, but I heard on the radio when he had a conference with some Dayo, he was in charge of the economy.
And in the time that you were a member of his bodyguard unit, what sort of work was he doing?
Response. Could you please repeat your question?
Thank you. In that period before the coup, while you were in his bodyguard unit in the forests, what was Mr. Khieu Samphan doing?
Response. In the forest, he didn't do much. But I heard on the radio that he was the head of the Funk.
I just want to make sure we're discussing the same period of time. I'm interested in the time in the forest before the coup. And I know it was a long time ago. Do you recall what Mr. Khieu Samphan was doing in the forest before the coup?
Response. He didn't do much work, as he stayed at his own place and I did not stay with him every day, so I could not tell you much about what work he did.
Thank you. Were there any meetings between Mr. Khieu Samphan and Tamok and any of the other people that you were protecting?
Response. I couldn't tell you about their meetings. It was their business and I was not involved.
As a bodyguard, were you ever asked to deliver any messages?
Response. No.
And what was the purpose of the movements? You told us that sometimes you were in Kampong Speu and then sometimes you were in Kampong Chnang and also at Oral Mountain. Why did you move between these locations?
Response. The movement was to avoid enemy from locating him.
And who made these decisions to move from one location to another?
Response. It was Tamok.
So, do I understand correctly that Tamok continued to command your unit while you were protecting Mr. Khieu Samphan and other people?
Response. Tamok managed everything from the work as well as the organizations of the forces.
Thank you. And how long did you continue to provide protection for Mr. Khieu Samphan and the other people that he was with? How long did that continue?
Response. It was from 1968 through 1969, and by 1970 I became a soldier.
When you became a soldier in 1970, where were the people such as Mr. Khieu Samphan, Vaughan Vet, Hu Nim, where were they when you became a soldier?
Response. I did not know where Tamok took them to because I left them and then I joined the military and I only focused on my work and I did not know about their whereabouts.
Thank you. When you say you don't know where Tamok took them, does that mean that they were at that time with Tamok?
Response. I did not see them, but I thought they were still with the Mok at the time.
Thank you very much. Now, we heard earlier your descriptions of some of the battles and battlefields that you were involved in. And I just want to first clarify one thing. In your first statement with the prosecutors, and for the record, this is E3/424, and it's question and answer number 1. You described how in 1973 the Southwest Zone increased to 3 regiments. Ta Sung was promoted to be the zone military commander, and you were promoted to be the battalion 136 commander in Regiment 16. I just want to make sure that we have that correct, that as at 1973 you were a battalion commander, because you mentioned earlier you were a regimental commander at one point. So I just want to check if we have the right facts. In 1973, were you a battalion commander or a regiment commander?
Response. I did not know about the name of Ta Song. I only knew Ta Seung. In 1970, I was still with the battalion. By 1975, I was promoted to the regiment commander, and I was appointed by Ta Seung, not Ta Song.
Thank you for correcting my poor pronunciation. I intended to say Suwon, so we're discussing the same person. You were promoted to be a regimental commander in 1975. And do I understand correctly from your previous answers that happened sometime before the attack on Phnom Penh?
Response. Yes.
Do you recall the month that happened? Or if you don't, that's fine.
Response. I cannot recall the date, because at that time I was in the battlefield.
Thank you. Another topic which you discussed with my colleague, and I just want to touch upon briefly, was the fighting along National Road 5. And if I noted correctly, I think you said you engaged in battles from Krakow to Kampong Chnang and then on to Phnom Penh. Were you engaged in any battles around the area of Udong?
Response: Yes, I did.
And could you tell the court, or could you describe for the court those battles? When was it that you were fighting around Udong, and when did the Khmer Rouge troops take control of Udong?
Response: During the fighting along National Road number 5, at that time they were the southwest soldiers to the east of Kroko up to Kampong Chnang and Udong. We were under the overall charge of Ta Mok, then Ta Seung. So we fought along the road up to Udong. But at that time, sometimes we won, sometimes we lost. And by the time we reached Udong, there were many casualties from the bombardment as well as from the shelling by the artillery. So by the time we reached Udong, I cannot recall the exact date, but it was in 1973 or 74. Also, we kept fighting consistently along National Road number 5. We fought along during the rainy season, and when the dry season commenced, we started fighting again. So we fight all around during both the rainy seasons and the dry seasons.
When ultimately you were able to take control of the city of Udong, do you recall what happened with the population living in that city? Did they continue to live there, or did they go anywhere else, or what do you recall about that?
Response: In the battlefields along National Road number 5, people actually fled through the liberated zone. They no longer stayed along that national road. There were only the Khmer Rouge soldiers and the Lunar soldiers fighting one another, but I cannot tell you the exact date or the period.
That's fine. So do I take it that people from Udong had fled to the liberated zones during these battles for the city? Would you like me to repeat the question?
Please.
I do realize you must be very tired. We're almost done for today. We were discussing the situation of people fleeing to the liberated zones so that there were only soldiers in the battlefield. And I just was asking whether the population of Udong, people living in Udong, also fled to the liberated zone as the city fell.
Yes, that is correct.
How large was the population of that city or town?
Response. I could not put a figure to the number of the population living there. There were those who controlled and take charge of the people living there at the rear battlefield, but I was at the front battlefield, so I could not know the exact number.
Was anyone in charge of taking these people to the back of the battlefield and making arrangements for them? Was anyone in the military in charge of that work?
Response. There were division commander, there were village chiefs, they cooperated with one another, but I could not know all of those village chiefs, and they were the ones who were ready to receive the people in the liberated zones. All I knew was that after Tasung, those people would be brought to the liberated zones, and then the chief of the villages there would take charge of them.
Mr. President, I'm mindful of the time. I can continue if you prefer me to continue, or if you prefer to take a break now, we're in your hands.
President, thank you. The hearing today has come to a conclusion, and we shall adjourn and resume tomorrow morning, commencing from 9 a.m. And tomorrow we will continue hearing the testimony of this witness, who will be questioned by the prosecutor and by this co-lead lawyers for civil parties. Mr. Mihwoon, the hearing of your testimony has not yet concluded, and you will be invited to come again to this court starting from 9 a.m. Likewise, the duty counsel, you are invited to return tomorrow. Court officer, please assist in the transport arrangement and for the return of the witness to his residence and have them returned tomorrow morning. Security guards, you are instructed to take the accused Nunji and Kisampon to the detention facility and have them returned to this courtroom prior to 9 a.m. The court is now adjourned.